So I'm back with another look at some updates, patches, performance and visual quality games, and Ghost of Yotei was a pretty decent game when it launched a couple of months ago on PlayStation 5, PlayStation 5 Pro players. But as is always the case, these games come out now and then they get updated, patched, and sometimes improved significantly post-release, and that's what's happened again here. The latest patch, 1.10, from Sucker Punch, which has just been updated just before I released this video, but it's only minor patch updates to some issues or other bugs within the game itself. Now, this latest patch from Sucker Punch enhances the sequel to Ghost of Tsushima with a set of modes of play that, in all likelihood, were planned to be ready at launch, and now we've seen them in many Sony first-party titles, such as Horizon Forbidden West, Spiderman, Spiderman 2, Ratchet & Clank, GoW Ragnarok, and others, and it has become a staple for PlayStation Worldwide Studios to extend those use cases and choices for PS5 and Pro players by also allowing those with a 120Hz screen and or VRR screens to play the game with slightly more options. Now, the two main advantages here are those of us with a 120Hz screen can now take advantage of that smoother, tighter 8ms refresh that offers a better balance between fluidity and input latency, with image quality now being slightly better than going straight to that performance mode. 25ms is the new half step from 30 to 60, and it means we get a faster, smoother 40Hz output in quality, which is now called balanced or ray trace balanced on base PS5 and PS5 Pro, allowing the resolution to sit slightly lower as a base from that TAU upsample method, which is AMD's FSR3 on PS5 consoles and PSSR on PS5 Pro consoles, and these remain very similar to my review, with all modes upscaling to 4K no matter the base or DRS levels, but the extra mode, which is only available for VRR screens, is to remove that cap or smooth the game out to that 40Hz target better by scaling the resolution a little bit more aggressively. Now, uncapping means the new balance mode now moves from 1/3 VSync refresh, a 100 divided by 3 is 40Hz, to a half refresh VSync, so 60Hz. And where we used to have a 60Hz ceiling, now goes up to the full 120Hz VSync level, which is that performance mode only for base PS5 players, and both performance and RT Pro modes for PS5 Pro players. And that is interesting comparison, but more on that shortly. In terms of resolution counts and the fact that FSR3 or PSSR is used, the IQ is still clean, sharp and largely stable, with some exceptions as covered in my review thanks to the art, colour and design. Effectively, the lower down the base resolution stack you go, the more information needs to be inferred from that upscaler, and that can cause different issues on both solutions. It favours PSSR, as I covered before, but FSR3 sometimes wins out on texture detail and other aspects. But when turning this uncapped mode on in all modes, PS5 now drops lower from all my counts, with the RT balance mode being the most affected, with the old 1620p base resolution now being approximately 12% lower at 1512p. But unlocking this and allowing it to hit that 60 FPS rate, we now see the lowest count of approximately 2176 by 1224, some 34% less than using balanced. Now, stepping through all these modes, this is the biggest hit I saw, with performance still hitting around 1080p at its lowest point, just more often when unlocked, and RT Pro mode unlocked on PS5 Pro also hits that same 1080p low more often, but using the computationally more expensive and superior PSSR solution that is built by PlayStation themselves. Again though, all these solutions go back to 4K with slightly better LOD and effect quality over that base PS5 console. Outside of this though, the image quality is almost identical to before, just faster, and we also see increases to input latency, helped most by that new 8ms refresh, now giving us a drastically faster response time, slicing over 23% in the RT Pro mode down to almost CRT levels of 54ms median. The performance mode is even faster, now sub 50ms as a medium, 48, which is over 42% faster than the previous 60Hz capped level. And this can be felt in combat for sure, in addition to those faster frame rates, which comes next in the performance test. So the 40Hz mode in both PS5 and PS5 Pro is pretty much locked. So you have a 120Hz screen and you used to play at 30 FPS ray tracing or quality. Ignore that, now jump straight to balanced or RT balanced respectively, as you gain faster response times as just detailed, smoother gameplay, and an almost imperceptible image to image quality and stability improvement or degradation, depending on how you look at it. Specifically for base PS5 players, as now you can get closer to that prior ray tracing 60 FPS mode that was exclusive to Pro players before this update. It is with VRR and uncapping those limits where things get really interesting, and we can actually test all of these modes and all of the hardware very close together in an almost identical run of real gameplay experience. Just doing the maximum, how fast can it actually go? The base PS5 in its performance mode staring at the sky is somewhere into the mid 90s, which is similar on the PS5 Pro. If you have dense cloud and volumetrics, again it can go into the hundreds, but using the unlocked RT Pro mode, which actually has the lowest level of resolution in using that PSSR as a base, but obviously still upscales back to 4K, but with the addition of ray tracing, this was the fastest performance hit I found on the PS5 Pro, which can go almost right up to 120 FPS, again staring at the sky, but on average you will just sit somewhere between the high 70s and low 90s at best. And then we can actually validate that in this next test, where we get like for like identical gameplay using a fixed and scripted escape from a castle mission, which I had during my gameplay before and went back to it and used it for this test. It is absolutely identical because it uses all of the functions and features of the engine: ray tracing, lighting, dynamic NPCs, streaming, and other aspects of combat alpha effects. All of those things work in harmony to allow us to test this hardware across PS5 and PS5 Pro across all versions side by side. So even though you can hit 120 FPS, don't expect that to be the common output both on PS5 Pro and base PS5. So taking the quality balanced uncapped mode and the ray tracing balanced uncapped mode, which is the best of all of them, as I say, if you uncap the quality or ray tracing mode, it just goes to 40. This one is a slightly lower base, but it allows it to run to potentially 60 FPS. But as you can see in this side by side perfectly aligned gameplay, neither of them hit that level, often staying somewhere just above that 40 FPS target that it's set for. And that means we tend to have an average slightly lower resolution than you would normally at the quality or ray tracing balanced just 40 FPS mode, but now you see slightly better performance, but on average they're almost identical. In fact, they're so close they're only 1.1% difference between PS5 base at quality and PS5 base at ray tracing balance. So if you do want the smoothest, fastest performance, then this is the mode to choose, but the most consistent is to leave it at that 40 FPS level, and then you won't see much of a difference.
Right past the tree line! We'll be out of range!
So next we pit the best against the best, the Ray Tracing Pro mode on PS5 and the Ray Tracing Balanced Unlocked mode on the base PS5, which you've just seen the results for. And as you can see here, the PS5 Pro is significantly faster. Remember, they're both almost running at the same base resolution of 1080p, although the superior image quality of PS5 Pro and slightly higher effects means it's doing slightly more in that time frame, but also the ray tracing is ever so slightly better in that version as well. And in addition, it can go way above 60 FPS, as you can see here. It can still dip just like it can on the base PS5, and these look like general streaming data access issues, context issues, because they happen identically when certain things happen, knocking characters out of the way, NPCs attacking, and certainly streaming in the next section towards the end of this area where you get the real-time cutscene, which again is still capped at 30 FPS in all of these modes no matter what you do. Nothing changes there. But on average, we are significantly faster, both in the 0.1% frame time lows and the overall frame rate performance, which I'll cover at the end. But it does highlight the fact that the PS5 Pro is delivering exactly on the recommended improvement that Sony said before they launched the PS5 Pro, which was somewhere between 45 to 55% improvement, and that's exactly what we get. 53% faster performance on the PS5 Pro using the ray tracing quality mode at better image quality and effects than the base PS5, which is almost a perfect balance test and lines up exactly with the metrics that PlayStation originally told us the PS5 would deliver on. Unfortunately, only first-party studios seem to get this level consistently.
It's fine.
One of the Oni raiders said Magoro found a secret way out of the castle.
So next we say, how fast can it run? So comparing PS5 Pro against itself, this time in the Ray Tracing Pro mode unlocked versus the Performance mode unlocked, we see almost identical frame times and stutters as before. And in fact, over this stretch of gameplay, we're only around 4 to 6% faster in this performance mode, although that does have a higher base resolution, often coming in above 1440p now, showing you the impact of ray tracing on the GPU throughput. But fundamentally, this means that both these modes almost run identical, and therefore you're better off choosing that Ray Tracing Pro mode unlocked, because you get better effects, better ray tracing visual quality and image quality throughout the game, albeit at a slightly lower resolution. But performance, you'd never notice the difference I'm showing here without this kind of frame rate detailed graph. And that means overall we get almost identical performance metrics. We get slightly better 0.1% lows on those frame times, simply again due to the fact there's less data throughput and context switching, with all that ray tracing work being called back now and just relying on those image based probes the game uses for its lighting solution. And also we get slightly higher average performance, the median coming in just above 70 FPS, whereas the Ray Tracing Pro mode comes just below it. Again, you wouldn't notice it without this kind of comparison. So now we hit the final comparison. The PS5 Pro performance versus the PS5 performance, both uncapped, both running as fast as they can. And like I say, these are almost identical levels of performance, and that's simply because the PS5 Pro is running a significantly higher base resolution, and it's also using PSSR to upscale that back to 4K, which offers a superior image quality and slightly better effects than what you're getting on the base PS5, and also it gets slightly better performance. But that means that in regards to performance, there's not a huge delta between the two consoles. Yes, the PS5 Pro may be running around 45 to 50% higher resolutions than the base PS5 and around 10% faster performance. In play, it doesn't really stand out that much. Visually, they're very similar. It is much sharper and clearer on the PS5 Pro, no doubt, but in play, even on a 4K screen, in action, it's not that easy to spot. And overall, this isn't the most performant or the most impressive version on the PS5 Pro, which is quite clearly the RT Pro mode. Again, with enhanced ray tracing, superior image quality, and almost identical performance as we see here.
Right past the tree line! We'll be out of range!
So what does this patch offer then to the base PS5 and PS5 Pro players? Well, let's start with the base PS5, which is by far the lion's share of the market. Here we can increase the old 30 FPS cap of the quality and ray tracing modes by over 50%, and almost achieve that on average, with the quality mode just pipping the RT mode when unlocked using a VRR screen. We get 44 versus 43 FPS as an average, with the 0.1% lows in this heavy streaming section giving us a small win on those stutters also. But a sub 2% difference is, for everyone playing, identical for all intents and purposes. The performance mode is still where the speed purists should remain, with it retaining a 44% improvement over the best quality mode on base PS5, but the choice to play with ray tracing enabled now at a variable 60 FPS with much better input latency is certainly a good addition to base owners on how to play. The PS5 Pro, as you would expect, offers a far superior level of choice, quality and performance, with the lowest input times and the fastest frame rates. Again, taking that Ray Trace Pro mode versus Ray Trace Balanced and Locked, the PS5 Pro is over 53% faster than the base PS5. Now in PC terms, this is the equivalent of jumping from an RTX 5060 to an RTX 5070, or thereabouts level of GPU, maybe even slightly more. And that is the level of headroom we have only just seen now. But not only that, using that performance mode versus PS5, we can see the same boost, but this time with a mix of IQ and performance both being superior. Only 10% faster in FPS, but still 50% plus higher resolution using a superior upscaler. And it is only thanks to these new modes we see these sort of gains the PS5 Pro can deliver over the great base console when it's pushed. I just wish these had come at launch and that third-party teams would push the Pro along similar levels more often, as when it does offer these choices and enhancements, it is certainly a tangible difference indeed. Anyway, that's it for all things performance, pixels, and console and PC related. Remember, if you like what I do here, do remember that I am self-funded and completely independent. This was up early, like all my videos, my patrons, along with other exclusive access. You can help me by supporting me over on Patreon for a couple of dollars or pounds a month, which really help. You can also subscribe, comment down below, and certainly give me a thumbs up if you liked it, and a thumb down if you didn't. But if you did or didn't, leave a comment down below to tell me why. Anyway, that's it. I'm out, but I'll see you very soon on the next one.
しばらく見ねえうちに立派に育ったな。その次の日、お母と一緒に苗木を植えたんだった。